evening, friends. So welcome back to paper analysis session. In my previous lecture, I held a discussion on section A. All those questions in the section A questions were discussed in detail. Now come to section B. One by one again I am going to discuss all such questions. I will just give you the required link how to write answers. So topic is not being explained. I will try to establish that link. So how the answer was supposed to be written. So first question is e-advocacy model. E-advocacy model of e-governance. E-advocacy model of e-governance can facilitate democratization of public policy making. Discuss. Democratization of public policy making. Through e-advocacy is not a very difficult question. E-advocacy model of e-governance. E-advocacy model of e-governance is about using digital platform or electronic tools and technologies so as to facilitate debate, discussion, and analysis, so as to facilitate digital campaigning or lobbying or consensus building, so that Aam Aadmi Con people, different groups and communities, they could influence the policy making. So e-advocacy is basically about use of electronic tools and digital platform to influence public policy. Public policy is not something which is for government only. Public policy is for public at large. So there has to be very close interaction between the government on the one hand, meaningful interaction between government on the one hand, society on the other. So e-advocacy is about bridging that gap by making use of digital platform and technology. So it facilitates debate and discussion. It facilitates public participation in decision making process, and then digital campaigning or lobbying and consensus building, then creating public awareness, spreading knowledge, dissemination of knowledge, all such things. By doing so, we ensure public participation and public accountability. It means people get an opportunity to participate in the decision making process. They can influence policy making, and they can also enforce the accountability of the government regarding policies. In this way, we bring public policy much closer to its stakeholders, all the stakeholders. It means what is the meaning of democratization? Democratization is the process. Democratization, the process by which something is brought closer to the will and aspirations and need of the society. So wherever the democratization of public health, democratization of education, sometimes we say democratization of democracy, if the democracy is not in spirit. So in this question you have to focus on two things: e-advocacy model of e-governance, and democratization of public policy making. Democratization of public policy making is about bringing public policy outside the rigid and narrow realm of institutions, to be exposed to public, to be brought in public domain. Not every policy, but the policies which are likely to affect public policies, which are likely to affect the life of the people the most. So such policies should be brought in the realm of public debate and discussion. I am providing digital platform, tools and techniques. We facilitate interaction between the government and society. Clear? And that is something which that leads to democratization of public policy making. Okay? But excess of everything is bad. Sometimes it happens, this digital platform unnecessary. Instead of facilitating meaningful debate and discussion and building of consensus, sometimes it creates a kind of chaos and confusion, because different groups and communities, the lobbies, they end up, presenting arguments and counter arguments. So it ends up becoming more a kind of chaos rather than a meaningful discussion. To that extent, policy making may be delayed. The process is delayed and efficiency is lost. So excess of everything is bad. This is the point. So positive side and to some extent negative side. If this point is adequately taken care of, then e-advocacy is a powerful instrument to democratize public policy making, and that makes your policies far more stable, because policies are the outcome of consensus. So it will be more stable and there will be greater amount of acceptability. And if there is a public participation in decision making process, then its implementation also becomes very easier, because society to a great extent, so people become mentally predisposed to the acceptance of such policy because they are involved in the debate and discussion, and they are given an opportunity to participate in the process. Clear? So this is about e-advocacy model of e-governance, which facilitate democratization of public policy. Catch hold of the root words: democratization of public policy. Democratization means the public policy to be brought closer to the will and aspirations and expectations of the society. That is democratization, and this is done through the instrument of e-advocacy model of e-governance. Now come to the next question. Neoliberal policies have enhanced the scope and opportunities of taxation for the government. Enhanced scope and opportunity of taxation for the government. Neoliberal policies. Neoliberal policies. Neoliberal policies stand for decentralization, stands for deregulation or privatization. So deregulation, decentralization, then privatization, then financial globalization, all such things put together facilitate flow of investment or technology and tools and techniques from one country to another country. Deregulation means that you remove the barriers, you allow the private sector, institutions and agencies to seek fuller expression of their potential. Then privatization, selling out public sector, the entities, on case to case basis, you examine the possibilities for growth and development, possibilities for the better contribution or participation. Accordingly, you decide. So you have deregulation and privatization. So deregulation, privatization, then financial globalization, all such things put together, what happens? It leads to unshackling of the potential of the private sector and entities, leads to competition. It leads to institutional pluralism, more than one institution, public and private. Getting a point? Public and private, domestic and foreign, competing against each other. Because the government tends to remove one other kind of barriers. Then rules and regulations are simplified, brought on procedures are simplified. Point clear. Then you also make your laws easier for you make investment climate far more conducive for the participation of even for foreign entities and entities and investors. All such things put together, when unshackle the potential of private sector entities, that leads to widening of the scope of activities, more of production, distribution. In this kind of environment, generally state plays the role of adjudicator, facilitator, then regulator, rather than the main producer of goods and services. So it invites a lot of participation. It leads to widening of the scope of activities, and widening of the scope of activities, more transaction, more business, more production, investment, all those things going on. That leads to expansion in the scope of taxation. Now more and more entities can be brought within the net of taxation, within the ambit of taxation. So there is a link between the two. Neoliberal policies have enhanced the scope and opportunities of taxation for the government. Neoliberal, in addition, I must say that liberal policy, neoliberal, neo means rebirth. Neo does not mean something new, something right from the scratch. It's not like that. Neo means something was there, a new version of that existing thing is there in front of you. And very often the word neo is used in disparaging sense. So here it is not like that, but the word neo, the neoclassical age, something. So neo is used, the term is used to refer to rebirth of something. Something was in existence for one of the reason it lost its relevance to some extent. Once again, a new version that thing has been presented to deal with the contemporary situation. So neoliberal policies. Neoliberal policy that stand for decentralization, stands for deregulation, then privatization, getting a point, and then financial globalization. All such things lead to the very controlled flow of, not completely free, under policies, the controlled flow of technology and the finances and the techniques, the management techniques and tools. All such things take place to provide for uninhibited expression of the potential of private enterprise. And that leads to expansion in the scope of activities, competition, pluralism, even those areas which were under the control of the government. Liberal policy means the government allows, government deregulates, monopoly is brought down, the monopoly, state monopoly is curtailed, and the areas which were totally under the control of the state, gradually that areas of economic activities are opened up for the private sector. That leads to expansion of the scope of economic activities, and by consequence, greater amount of, widening of the scope of taxation. Then you have policy analysis process is limited if possible outcomes and alternate potential policies are neglected. Policy analysis process is limited if possible outcomes and alternate potential policies are neglected. Discuss policy analysis. Policy analysis is a part of the science of policy making, policy sciences, and policy making is a dynamic activity. Policy making is a dynamic activity, it is a dynamic process. Policy is not an end in itself. Policy is an instrument towards an end. So policy as a set system of decision is an instrument which is used by the government in furtherance of some goals and objectives. Point clear? So policy is not an end in itself. So policy analysis is that part of science of policy making which aims at examining the instrumental worth of any model of policy towards the accomplishment of objective. If the policy is not examined, if policy is not examined in terms of its possible consequences, that policy can never be a rational policy. A rational policy means that you have chosen a course. A policy means a course of action that you have chosen. Policy is more concerned with how, and objective is concerned with what. To accomplish what, you choose a course of action. How we are going to accomplish that objective. That is policy. So taking policy decision means that you choose one course of action out of many. So if the course of action chosen by you in the light of some value system, the course of action that you have chosen, the outcome of which cannot be evaluated, outcome of which cannot be anticipated, it means that policy is not a rational policy. First thing you need to understand. So policy analysis, have a look here. Policy analysis process is limited if possible outcomes and alternate potential policies are neglected. So policy analysis will become the victim of closed system circularity. You develop a model of policy, you examine it, but if you do not anticipate what are the possible consequences, and then you do not visualize, you do not apply your imaginative flair as to what can be the other alternative courses of action, then you might end up taking a policy decision which cannot be where it will be very much difficult to justify it. That will not be an optimal decision, because other courses of action may have better potential to accomplish the objectives in the best possible manner. So policy analysis, if policy analysis is not done in a way and manner to anticipate possible outcomes, if it does not include consideration of alternatives, it means it will become the victim of closed system circularity. So policy analysis should ideally involve that policy and this course of action and objective link between the two, and the level of efficacy that it can achieve, and then you also explore other courses of action, other alternative policies, okay, and you go for the pros and cons analysis, and out of the different courses of action, you have to choose the one which appears to be reasonable, which is much more likely to accomplish the desired objectives and goal in the best possible manner. So policy is not an end in itself. Policy analysis is done before the implementation of policy. And policy analysis after implementation is known as policy evaluation. So here in the question, You have to, policy analysis process is limited if possible outcomes and alternate potential policies are neglected. So policy analysis will become meaningless, will become a victim of closed system circularity. Its instrumental worth and value can be questioned. You always remain in doubt because other courses of action, other alternative policies could have led to the accomplishment of objective in better way. So what the hell you are doing? What is the meaning of your analysis? If your analysis remain confined to policy and policy only, no. On the basis of available intelligence, you have to explore. You have to apply your intellectual spontaneity, your imaginative flair. That what could be the other courses of action. If this is not done, then policy analysis is not policy analysis in the real sense. Point clear? So is limited if possible outcomes and alternate potential policies are neglected. Sometimes one more thing that happens, that policy analysis, a good policy analysis where you examine more than one courses of action. Sometimes a course of action may have so many merits. A course of action may be so much sound that you choose. It may also suggest you to change the very objective itself. ठीक है, जैसे आप कभी कभी ड्रेस खरीदने के लिए गए, आपको शर्ट और ट्राउजर ये सब लेना था कुछ, ठीक है, और आपको लेना था और आप गए वहां पे, तो आप इसके साथ साथ बहुत सारे ऑप्शंस भी देखे. उसने ऑप्शंस में आपको कुछ ऐसा दिखा दिया, ऐसा इतना अच्छा भी कुछ मिल सकता है कि आपको बुद्धि आ गई कि नहीं, अभी इस ओकेजन में इस चीज के लिए इससे अच्छा तो कुर्ता पजामा ले लेते. ये भी हो सकता है. इसका मतलब है कि कोर्स ऑफ एक्शन मे बी so much, course of action may have so many merits that it actually widens the scope of your analysis to such an extent that you may go to the extent of enriching your objectives. The objectives may be redefined. So therefore, when you go for the policy analysis, alternative courses of action, potential alternative policies too should be examined. What could be the alternatives? And some of the alternatives may, and one or two of them may suggest you to redefine the objectives. Sometimes it happens. And one more thing, that again, policy analysis process limited if possible outcomes and alternate potential policies are neglected. And if too much of alternatives are considered, then again it may also lead to policy paralysis. There can be more than one aspects of it, and because it is written, in the question, discuss. So the word is used, discuss. So you can write the positive as well as some limitation negative side as well when they use the word discuss or critically examine. Point is clear? So policy analysis, but excessive analysis very often lead to delay in decision making process. And in that case, the benefits accruing from a good policy decision will be much less than the negativities that will arise out of delayed decision making. You ended up taking too much of time in taking decision and implementing it. Then you have values and ethics in civil services are shaped by global practices and trends explained. Yes, values and ethics in civil services in contemporary times to a great extent it is conditioned by global trends and practices. The reason being that today we are living in an increasingly globalizing world. ठीक है, करंट अफेयर्स के हिसाब से भी लेटेस्ट जो डेवलपमेंट्स है उसको एक बार साइड में रख दो, या तो बोले कि वी आर गोइंग फॉर डी ग्लोबलाइजेशन, वो अलग चीज हो गई. But we can say safely that we are living in an increasingly globalizing world, and then we are a part of a vast complex, or vast and very complex matrix of interdependency. So we affect and we get affected. Gradually, what is happening at the global level, when so much of investment, trade, commerce, business, all those things are taking place, transfer of tool, technique, process, technology among the countries, so cross-border investments taking place. So what happens gradually, a code of conduct or some kind of standard services, so it means some kind of general acceptable norms, or you can say various protocols, universally applicable rules, norms, protocol, values is gradually emerging. That is the outcome of the globalization. So when two or more countries, they are involved in this matrix of interdependency, we get affected. So this is what I mean to say, that institutional behavior, whether state, public institution or private institution, institutional behavior is motivated by the necessity to regularize things, to stabilize things, and to make the things more predictable. So that's why what is happening at the global level, a global level, ethical and moral standards are gradually developing, or it has developed to a great extent, which affect the civil servants or civil services all over the world. So what I mean, I'm just explaining it. So in contemporary times, you can say the civil services, the question is, values and ethics in civil services are shaped by global practices and trends. So values and ethics in civil services are affected by global practice and trends because of the force of globalization, the vast matrix of interdependency. Then one more thing, that civil servants are required to frame policies in contemporary times. They formulate policies taking into consideration not only domestic demands, but what is happening at the global level is also required to be taken into consideration. So in the course of conforming to global standards, what is happening, that some sort of uniformity is gradually developing in the ethical, moral standards and values of civil services all over the world. And one more thing that we need to understand, that most of the countries in the world are now democratic countries. Most of the countries have are inspired by the principles of modern democratic welfare state, and that's why there is some sort of basic uniformity in the ethical, moral standards and values governing civil services, whether it is related to honesty or integrity or impersonality, objectivity, anonymity. So these are the principles which are applicable to most of the countries. But again, you need to understand that finally, the values and ethics, civil services, values and ethics governing civil services in any country is affected not only by global trends. It is affected by an interplay of global factors, national and local factors as well. So a country's historical backdrop, historical factors, then its tradition, its value system, ethical and moral standards of society, then its legal history, how the constitution has evolved over a long period of time. So all such factors. Then again, the local factors also, all put together. I mean to say that in the wake of increasing the globalizing world, the matrix of interdependency, then trade, commerce, business, also things are taking place. Again, this backdrop, you can say that global trends and practices affect to a great extent the values and ethics in civil services, but national factors and local factors, cannot be undermined. So we have a kind of complex interplay of global and local factors these days. Not only in the case of civil services, most of the things that you conform to global standards, and then you are also affected by the local conditions and factors and national factors, because there can be some similarities, some uniformity, but there cannot be absolute similarity and uniformity because conditions differ from country to country. Every country has its own history, tradition, value system, and if you see the level of technological advancement, that is also different. Then value system of society is different. Their reason, the mission, and number of political, social, cultural, all factors are there put together that affect values and ethics in civil services. Values and ethics in civil services are shaped by global. So इसमें क्वेश्चन में क्या करना है, पहले ये मेंटेन कर सकते हो, values and ethics in civil services are affected by global trends and practices thanks to globalization, thanks to matrix of interdependency, thanks to the pressure on civil servants to conform to the global standards, gradually evolving universally applicable ethical moral standards for civil services. And then you focus that apart from this, national and local factors are equally important. So all over the world, you can say in modern democratic state, subject to some basic uniformity, things differ from country to country. वेबियन मॉडल ही है, उसके प्रिंसिपल्स सारे कंट्री में सेम एप्लीकेबल हैं. वो वेबियन मॉडल ऑब्जेक्टिविटी, रेशनैलिटी और इम्पर्सनैलिटी, एनोनिमिटी, फिर भी ब्यूरोक्रेसी डिफर, द परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ ब्यूरोक्रेसी डिफर फ्रॉम कंट्री टू कंट्री. Why? Because every country has its own peculiar set of social, cultural, political conditions, value system, tradition. So all such things put together affect the overall profile of civil services, as you move from one country to other country. Clear? So finally, you have to write that it is no doubt, it is the more prolific factor, the global trends and practices, but national and local factors also contribute significantly in giving shape to ethical and moral standards applicable to civil services. Standard of civil services. Then you have महिलाओं के विकास और सशक्तिकरण. ठीक है, economic development alone is not sufficient component for women development and empowerment. Why only women development? Development by its very nature, development is a qualitative concept. So development as a concept, as a process, is a qualitative phenomenon. So it is about the expression of total potential. It is not about giving something to somebody. It is more about creating conditions for the expression of inner potential. So development by its very nature is a qualitative phenomenon. And second thing, it is multidimensional. It is related to the expression of the fuller potential of individual, groups and community or society and nation in different aspects of life. And not only economic life, social life, political life and cultural life. So for women development also, women development will never be complete if it is confined to economic development only. It has to be accompanied by development in the sphere of the society or the culture and the polity. Getting a point? So all such things put together completes the concept of development. And this economic development, social development, and political development, cultural developments, all such developments are different dimensions of development. They are interdependent, interrelated. In fact, economic development too can never be complete unless it is accompanied by social development or cultural development, okay, and political development. So it is a multidimensional concept. These are interdependent and interrelated. Point clear? So economic development alone is not a sufficient component for women development. For women development is necessary that apart from their participation in the economic development, that they participate, they have access to the available resources of the country, they can participate in the process of economic growth and development. So they are involved in the economic activities, and they also get remuneration, compensation for the same. They have good purchasing power, but it has to be accompanied by the developments in terms of social structure, that gradually we develop a social system or social structure where women are not subjected to any kind of disabilities. They enjoy equal status, equal opportunity. They do not suffer from one other kind of disabilities in the name of tradition, culture or value system. Because if that kind of inhibition comes, then it has to be changed. Because the most important thing is that streaming flow of life, that in women, that should not be inhibited. And then we can look after tradition, culture. This does not mean that you need to go against the tradition or value system, but gradually a social structure has to be developed where women, they do not suffer from any kind of disability, and they can really walk, on equal platform with men. They do not suffer. They do not suffer any kind of disability on the ground of their gender. So that kind of social structure will develop. And then a cultural development or political development, their participation in the political process, they have a stake in the economy of the country, they have a stake in the political administrative system, and they have a stake in the society and the culture. So everywhere they should be represented. Development is the real development. Development can never be unidimensional. It is multidimensional development. Same is the case with society or country. Okay? So more specific explanation, economic development alone is not a sufficient component for women development and empowerment. Economic development has to be accompanied by development in the other dimensions of life. Economic empowerment is not enough. It must be accompanied by social empowerment, political empowerment, cultural empowerment. So their potential should find expression in the different dimensions of life. That only can make them, happy. And if they are happy and they are satisfied, they can make, positive contribution to the growth and development of society. Point clear? So economic empowerment has to be accompanied by, and you have to maintain that economic empowerment, social empowerment, political empowerment, these are all interdependent, interrelated. Economic empowerment cannot be sustained over a long period of time if it is not accompanied by social and political empowerment. They are mutually reinforcing in nature. Then you have F.W. Riggs, Industria, Interdependent Economy, is a precursor for some features of postmodern public administration. Is a standard question, very good question. F.W. Riggs is one of the prominent scholars of comparative public administration, and he played a very important role in ensuring a shift of focus. F.W. Riggs is one of those scholars who streamlined the necessity of streamlined the necessity of changing the orientation of comparative study in the academic world of public administration. He was of the view that administration cannot be seen in isolation from society. Administrative institutions, practices, processes, these are deeply embedded in the socio-economic, political, and cultural environment within the bounds of which the administration functions. So, administration is not an isolated entity. Administration is not an isolated entity. Administration is deeply embedded in the environmental conditions. First of all, you have to understand that. Then come to the question. F.W. Riggs, Industry and Interdependent Economy. So F.W. Riggs developed a prismatic Sala model. He developed a three-pronged model. All of you have studied that. He said that administration can be understood. Administrative system can be understood. Its peculiar features can be understood in the light of the society and the economy it is placed within. So accordingly, he categorized societies into three. You have fused society, you have fused, and then you have prismatic society in the stage of transition, and then the third was diffracted. That diffracted society is being referred to here, the industria. So first of all, he developed the model of agraria, industria, and transitia. That society, he categorized society into three: agraria society, agraria, and then industria, and then between the two, transitia. Later on, this model was refined. It was made more accommodative, more sophisticated. So it became fused model and diffracted model. In between the two, you have prismatic model. So fused model is something which is fused model. Actually, this fused society is the one which is characterized by industria interdependent economy. This is the ideal state. So F.W. Riggs, he emphasized that society begin their journey as agraria, as a model agraria, and they undergo transitia. Okay, and then they reach the stage of industria. That is the final stage, and that stage is characterized by a lot of clarity. Clarity means that you have a functional specialization in the economy. You have different subsystems very clearly located, and they are clearly located in terms of their jurisdiction, in terms of their function. There is not anything like overlapping. There is a lot of clarity. So you have market forces are very much active. The structure of the society is not so much vertical, it is horizontal. Remember one thing, when we talk about industria interdependent economy, F.W. Riggs industria interdependent economy, this is economy. It is not concerned only with economy. This is a model of economy and it will have implications for society as well. So overall, industria interdependent economy is characterized by functional specialization in the economy, then a kind of network of different subsystems, different kinds of service providers network. Then you find that in this kind of a structure of bureaucracy is not so much rigid. You'll find that technological advancement in that society, bureaucracy designed on scientific lines, rules, procedures are comparatively simple. Then market playing a dominant role in the production and distribution of goods and services. So and in this kind of society, bureaucracy over a period of time, bureaucracy also undergo a lot of changes. So bureaucracy is not a rigid bureaucracy with a wall of separation between itself and society. So bureaucracy is very active, and it interacts with society to understand the dislikes and preferences, and the focus is on collaborative kind of approach and alliances like state institutions, private institutions, then civil society, various research and development organizations. They work in collaboration to contribute in the process of growth and development for the betterment of all. So industria interdependent economy is characterized by this kind of features: the functional specialization, different subsystems, some kind of collaboration, a spirit of collectivism, then bureaucracy far more professional bureaucracy is constantly in touch with society being aware of, society is knowledgeable, aware of their rights, Okay, and then a lot of interaction, then society, civil society, then state institutions, private institutions, working with a spirit of collectivism. This kind of model, and people, as I said, and then instead of ascriptive norms, achievement norms are applicable in this society. It means your status in the society is governed not on the basis of what you have inherited. You are the elderly members of society. It's not like that. Not family, the kins and kids and the family values and ties. These are not so much important. What you have achieved in life, that decides and determines your status in the society. So these are the features of industrial interdependent economy. So industry interdependent economy, but it's not only about economy, it is also about society. What kind of society, what kind of bureaucracy it is associated with. So this model is something which is precursor for some features of postmodern public administration. It means some features of postmodern public administration are in consonance with these developments, these features. So what are those features? As I discussed, industry interdependent economy, its features, and postmodern public administration. Postmodern public administration is also about, bringing public administration, liberating public administration from the cycles of very rigid notion of rationality and objectivity. So making public administration more democratic, more sensitive in nature, without compromising with scientific spirit, bringing public administration closer to society. So postmodern public administration is characterized by, not so much a rigid, top-down approach of authority. It is characterized by a bureaucratic structure which is more, you can say resilient and more dynamic in nature. The structure is more horizontal than vertical. Bureaucracy constantly in touch with society. Rules, regulations, procedures are simplified. It's a human face of administration. Rules and procedures. And then it is believed that there is no absolute truth. There is no absolute truth. Truth is something which can be situated in or located in various societies, in their tradition, in their norms, their values. The administration has to interact individual experiences, value system and tradition of different groups and communities. These are required to be examined. So we need postmodern public administration is governed not only by quantitative factors, the facts, indices, or for that matter, the statistical tools or techniques being applied to correct facts, and on the basis of facts you decide the things. No. Postmodern public administration is about not only quantitative but qualitative analysis of the developments or the factors, taking place, or the factors in the environment, and on the basis of which decisions are taken and decisions are implemented. So postmodern public administration stands for more resilient, more dynamic, more sensitive, more collaborative, more inclusive administration. The focus is on inclusivity. Focus is on post-positivism. That means the name of science or science of administration, we cannot lose sight of human the administration. We need to work with people. Instead of creating wall of separation, we need to take the people along as far as possible. So postmodern public administration, its features are in consonance with industrial interdependent economy of F.W. Riggs. This is the answer. So here you have to establish that that certain features of industrial interdependent economy in this three-pronged structure. Industrial interdependent economy's features are something which gradually lead to those kind of features postmodern public administration stands for. So actually you have to prove that these are the features which gradually lead a society towards those features which are associated with postmodern public administration. So this is precursor. Precursor is something that comes before. So features of industrial interdependent economy is a precursor. It gradually leads to some features of postmodern public administration. So you have to focus on the consonants. Industria interdependent economy. It talks about functional specialization. Here you have functional specialization. Here, industry. Here you have industria interdependent economy. Things are so structured, so much discipline. Unless things are structured and disciplined, there is not overlapping of things. There is no confusion. There is not so much of heterogeneity. Unless you achieve this here, you cannot reach this stage. So the features of this gradually leads to this kind of features of postmodern public administration. So you can say there is a sequential linkage between the features of industria interdependent economy, sequential linkage industria interdependent economy, and postmodern public administration. A society gradually moves towards this postmodern public administration. Getting a point? उस पर फोकस आपको उस पर डालना पड़ेगा, इस पे अब इसका आंसर जो लिखोगे 150 200 वर्ड्स में, 150 वर्ड्स में, तो उसको कैसे इनकैप्सुलेट करोगे? ठीक है, सीधा F.W. Riggs, one of the prominent scholars of comparative public administration, he gave the model of prismatic Sala model, wherein he found that administration, its features and characteristics, is affected by the kind of society it belongs to. So you have fused society and a fused and diffracted on the extremes, and between the two you have prismatic society. And diffracted model actually relates to industria interdependent economy, which is characterized by functional specialization, then prolific forces of application of market forces, then well-informed society, technological advancement, then a more resilient and dynamic bureaucracy. Getting a point? Resilient dynamic bureaucracy, and more of qualitative and quantitative approach to understand the environment, its problems, and to respond to the same, widening of the range of choices. Getting a point? And then responding to diversity of preferences. These are the things. And then this kind of society gradually leads to development of features of postmodern public administration. And postmodern public administration is characterized by, as I discussed, that more of horizontal structure of bureaucracy, simplification of scientific rules and procedures, then focus on inclusivity, focus on marginalized section of the society, the focus on collaborative alliances, and network governance kind of thing, all put together. So therefore, unless a society has reached this stage, it is much less likely that it will reach the stage of, the refracted model, industria interdependent economy. Unless society has reached that stage, it is difficult for it to gradually move towards postmodern public administration. Then you have role and responsibility of the state in the development of the role and responsibility of the state in the development process has been overemphasized and given undue importance, critically examined. So you can write positive as well as negative side. The role and responsibility of the state, development by its very nature, as I discussed earlier, development by its very nature is a multi-star script. Okay, though the state appears to be playing a more prolific and more visible role, but no state, no government alone can accomplish development. So it involves the action of the state agencies, institutions, and then private institutions and agencies, then civil society, or for that media, research and development organizations, and various other institutions, and contribution by individuals, groups and communities as well. So development is by its very nature is a collective enterprise, but the state has been overemphasized. Why? Because development demands two things, stability as well as change. Development demands two things, stability as well. Without getting a stable disposition, you cannot go for the change, and development will not be possible. And it is the state which is expected or which provides such a stable disposition. that state plays a strong, a centripetal role in the process of development. That's why it appears to be more visible. But the role of private institutions and agencies and civil society media can never be undermined. So that's the point that you have to focus. The role responsibility of the state in the development process has been overemphasized and given undue importance. Critically examined. It has been given undue importance. Why? Because it is more visible. Why? Because it is a centripetal force. It frames policies, implements policies, then programs and the projects, then enactment of law, enforcement of the same. So carrying out different kind of functions, developmental functions and regulatory functions, adjudicative functions. So that's why it appears that the state creates an environment for development and state carries out the process of development. But in reality, what is not visible appears to be equally important or sometimes more important. The role of individual groups and communities and traders and the businessmen, then scientists, all of them contribute in the process of development. It is only a matter of, like some contributions are more visible, some contributions are not so much visible, but it does not mean that importance can be undermined. Then you have affirmative action for equal opportunity. Affirmative action for equal opportunity is a cornerstone in recruitment to public services. Affirmative action for equal opportunity. Equal opportunity is a cornerstone in recruitment to public services. Discussed in the global context. Yes. See, recruitment to public services and equal opportunity. So it is about affirmative action means positive discrimination. The entire question rests on the idea that we need not only formal equality, we need equality in the real sense, substantive equality. And substantive equality is possible only when you ensure that your public services are truly representative in character. You ensure that there are certain groups, to ensure that groups and communities which have which have suffered from one or other kind of disabilities because of historical or other factors, these are given some space. They are given some space. They are given some kind of support, so that they could be brought in the streamline of the public services and or for that matter, inclusive government and governance of the country. Point clear. So public recruitment, affirmative action for equal opportunity. Affirmative action for equal opportunity demands that there has to be some kind of positive discrimination in favor of weaker, underprivileged sections of society, so that they also get an opportunity to participate in the process. And this is the cornerstone of recruitment to public services. Public services have to be more representative in character, and public services can be representative in character only when then opportunity is equally available to the people. Our Article 16, our Constitution, it also talks about equality of opportunity, but equality of opportunity hold little significance unless all the participants begin from the same start line. So there is nothing like start line. There are people who suffer from so much of disabilities and problems. Okay, so they begin their journey, not from the start line. They begin their race much behind. So therefore, they are to be brought. They are to be supported, to be brought to the same position, the start line, and then actually the competition begins. Then only you can say there is equality of opportunity. This is the idea. Affirmative action, positive discrimination. In India, it is known as reservation. What is the basic idea behind reservation? That the weaker, underprivileged sections of society, they are to be brought in the mainstream of society, economy, culture, polity of the country. So how can you bring them in the mainstream of socio-economic life? Because they suffer from various limitations because of historical factors. So they are to be supported by the government through positive discrimination. What the government does for weaker, underprivileged section of society, government can legally deny the same to the others. In this way, through positive discrimination, they are brought to a level where from the real competition will take place. Okay, so then public recruitment. Otherwise, formal equality holds no significance. Formal equality of opportunity is there. Then those who are graduate, they can appear for this competitive examination. No, because those who are comparatively well off, they don't have any problem, but there are people, groups and communities, they suffer from different kinds of problems, so they cannot reach that stage. So they are not at that stage, so they are to be supported so that they could be brought at the same level, and then you can say that you have done justice. So public services, be it the political system or administrative system, these are to be truly representative in character. Then only you can earn trust and confidence, you can achieve stability. Clear? So this, and the global context, this is something, this affirmative action for equal opportunity, it began in USA. It began in USA. There also this question was raised that we need substantive equality. Substantive equality. We need some kind of positive discrimination. So, it is applicable there in Canada, and then in Europe also. In Europe it is known as positive action. In India it is known as reservation. Then equity opportunity, something like this there in Canada. So by different names it is known, but in principle they are more or less, they are same in principle, they are same. That public recruitment should reflect an element of justice, and this is possible only through positive discrimination. Positive discrimination, reverse discrimination, you can say. So affirmative action for equal opportunity is a cornerstone in recruitment to public services. If it is not there, then your public recruitment cannot be truly representative in character. Then the objective of liberalization, privatization and globalization and of new public management was to limit government functions and reduce public expenditure. Good. However, both functions and expenditure has increased. Account for the paradox. Account for means that you have to give reasons. That the objective of liberalization, new public management which became very much popular in 1990s was basically inspired by the principles of market-based economy, which aimed at improving the efficiency, economy and effectiveness of the government agencies by incorporating the ideals of professionalism of the private sector. It no doubt new public management strongly advocated for state minimalism, and a more prolific role to be played by the market in the production distribution of goods and services. It stood for, NPM stands for institutional pluralism, competition, but soon it was realized that even market fundamentalists, they accepted that successful functioning of market-based economy or market is not possible unless the state plays its role. State plays role effectively. It means without a strong state in the center, market cannot perform well. So it means state minimalism that NPM was talking about, that many of us have misunderstood. That state minimalism was not so much about withdrawal of state, it was more about a qualitative shift and change in the role of the state. And that it means NPM, inspired by the ideas of liberalization, privatization, globalization, all that I have discussed. Very soon it was realized that the government, unless the government plays the role of regulator, facilitator, adjudicator, government providing all kind of policy support and creating a conducive environment for investment, growth, development, so market will not be able to perform. So where the state withdrew from the role of main producer and distributor of goods and services, but more than that, state assumed new responsibilities as a regulator, facilitator and adjudicator and the policy maker. So here the role of the state became very much important. Earlier, when there was state monopoly, things were not so much complex, but once you enter the realm of liberalization, privatization, globalization, it's characterized by more than one institutions competing against each other, public and private institutions, domestic and foreign. So you're required to regulate, you're required to control, you have to ensure the level playing field for all the players. You have to educate disputes, you have to come up with new policy paradigm, because you have to protect the interest of the country. You have to protect your economic interest, you have to protect the interest, it means you have to look after the interest of the domestic players, you have to look after the interest of the environment, and you have to ensure that competition is free and fair. Second, the domestic industries, their interest, lot many things are there, and then you have to deal with developments taking place at the global level, because finally you have to negotiate with the global realities in such a way that it is favorable to us, and for that policy making has become so much important. So what I mean to say, NPM, inspired by liberalization, privatization, globalization, no doubt it focused on state minimalism. That state minimalism was not so much about withdrawal of a state. It, in fact, role of the state underwent a qualitative shift and change. So that's why it means a reduction in the role of the government on one side, on the one hand, was accompanied by significant expansion or improvement in the role of the state elsewhere. So, a state is not playing the main role of producer and distributor of goods and services, but the role of a state as a facilitator, adjudicator, regulator has increased so much. So, that has led to increase in expenditure, and that has also led to expansion in the operational domain of the state. And it does not mean NPM never said that state has to withdraw completely. There are areas where the state institutions and agencies are much better placed than private sector. So NPM, or before that public choice approach, all such ideas were not necessarily against the complete state withdrawal. It was more about rationalization of the role of state. Rationalization of the equation of relationship between state and market. Unclear. So state minimalism has to be understood here. So it was liberalization priority. It was about to limit the governmental functions and reduce public expenditure. So it has to be understood in one aspect. It has to in terms of production, distribution of goods and services. But it was not about limiting the role of state on the other side. So the extent to which things have been restricted here, more than that, the responsibility of the state has increased. Then you had the basis of comparative study of public administration has evolved from institutional approach to the contemporary political economic process approach. Have all these approaches enabled the development of theory of comparative public administration? No, yes. Comparative public administration, the nature, content and orientation of comparative study in public administration. Comparative study underwent significant change after Second World War, thanks to the contribution made by F.W. Riggs, who emphasized the point that we can never understand, or the goal of comparative study cannot be accomplished unless administration is understood and examined in the context of normative conditions it is placed in, because administration cannot work in isolation. So that's why there you can see a shift from institutional approach, where the focus was more on the institution, peculiarities of the institutions, its problems, its structure, or the rules, method, technique, process, its pattern of response. So that could hardly be so much meaningful. Institutional approach. So focusing only on institutions, comparison of institutions in one country, other country, it was not so much meaningful. That's why F.W. Riggs and the scholars, more particularly after Second World War, the scholars emphasized the necessity of going for the comparative study in what kind of configuration? The structural functional approach, and then political and economic process approach. That we have to see administration placed in a political milieu, in the political environment, in an economic environment, because administration gets affected by the actions of the value system of the political institutions, their line of thinking, their ideological orientation. It is affected by economy. What is the model of economy, whether inspired by socialism or capitalism or something other. So political and economic factors affect administration, and administration significantly affects the orientation of your political system and then economy. So there is a mutually influencing relationship. Our comparative study of administration will never be complete unless we understand administration in the given political and economic context, unless we try to examine and understand administration as deeply embedded in the political and economic process of the country. Sorry. So there has been a shift from institutional approach to political economic process approach, but it has not led to development of one integrated, unified comparative public administration theory. No, it has not led to development of one integrated theory. In fact, it has led to development of such a huge super causal, you can say, the body of information, knowledge, research and analysis, that on the basis of which many theories have been propounded in one or other aspects of administration and its environment. So shift from institutional approach to political economic process, it has led to a more meaningful more meaningful and significant multi-dimensional understanding of administration placed in an environment, pattern of response, how it is affected, how it affects the different dimensions of life. It has led to a huge stock of information, knowledge, understanding of the pattern of behavior of administration inside, then what is happening the outside, the internal environment, external environment, such a significant, substantive understanding of things, but it has not led to development of one integrated theory of comparative public administration. It has become a very, very powerful reference point for scholars. They come and they examine, they analyze, and many new theories have been propounded. So comparative public administration, you can say, the intellectual coffers of public administration is so rich that almost every aspect of administration has found expression within the bounds of it. That's why comparative public administration is known as the sub-discipline in the discipline of public administration. So movement from institutional approach to political and economic process approach has not led to development of one unified theory, but it has provided a strong base for the emergence of many new theories. Then we have can competency mapping linked to career development incentivize civil servants' commitment to effective service delivery. Civil servants' commitment to effective service delivery. Clear? Effective service delivery. And this is incentivize. What is so? Can competency mapping linked to career development incentivize? Yes, incentive. What is competency mapping? Competency mapping is very broad and qualitative in nature compared to job descriptions. So various positions in the organization, competency mapping means the various positions are clearly defined in terms of nature of responsibilities, what kind of skill, what kind of knowledge, what kind of behavioral orientation is required in the person or the employee, officer, whosoever is the person is required, who is going to occupy this position. So competency mapping is a management tool which aims at defining various positions in terms of the nature of job, nature of responsibility, and the kind of skill and knowledge and behavioral orientation which is required. If it is done, it to a great extent brings an alignment between the requirement. It brings an alignment between the competency level of the incumbent and the requirement of that position. Because once a job is well defined in terms of what is required, accordingly that kind of person will be appointed. So there will be greater alignment between the professional competence of the person and what is expected of that position. No doubt it leads to improvement in performance. It brings an element of scientificism in the recruitment and in the utilization of human resource in general. It makes performance assessment evaluation much easier. It facilitates enforcement of better accountability and discipline, and that also significantly contributes to further growth and development of various persons occupying these positions. They constantly improve in terms of their skill and knowledge because they know what is required at this position. Their role perception becomes so much clear. So that in a way creates a ground for them to avail of several benefits, rewards, and lot many things are there. So it incentivize the commitment. It incentivize civil servants' commitment to effective service delivery. Quite clear? So you have competency mapping. Every position is clearly defined. Accordingly, persons are appointed. So there will be alignment between the position, requirement of the position, and competency level of the person. Only that kind of person will be appointed to such position, and these things will lead to best of the performance, better performance management, and better performance management means better career development, and better development in the career. It incentivizes in a way and benefit the civil servants commitment to effective service delivery. So their commitment to effective service delivery, it is incentivized. How? By improvement or in their career. And how this improvement in the career takes place? Because of alignment of their professional competence and and the requirement of the position. Right when Gulick and Ulrich had also emphasized on that. The good structure is the one There is a kind of alignment between the position and the professional competence of the person. But that begins with developing the science of work and science of position. That you study every position in the organization, then what is required, according recruitment takes place, alignment takes place, list of friction, better performance, better development, and career development. It incentivize their commitment. So their commitment to service delivery system, that is incentivized by the career development brings within its purview most of the things. You talk about social incentives or economic incentives or acknowledgement or reward, things come within the bound of that. Then we have effectiveness of civil society in development process is only when state institutions are receptive to inputs from the civil society organization discussed. Apparently, it appears to be correct that the effectiveness of civil society in development process is only when their contributions or their suggestions, these are accepted by the state institutions. Clear? There is only when the state institutions are receptive to inputs from civil society. So apparently it is correct. But we need to understand the role of civil society is not only to provide input to the state institutions. If inputs are the state institutions are receptive to inputs from the civil society, then the policies of the state may be far more representative in nature, more accommodative, and more, it will bring more of inclusivity in nature, provided the civil society, they are making objective assessment of the case, they are providing true and genuine information, and they provide input without any kind of narrow political interest. So in that case, state institutions make use of the same, and they can make better policy characterized by an element of inclusivism, greater responsiveness. What is clear? But if these are not accepted, civil society's inputs are not accepted by state institutions, there also you cannot say that its relevance gets diminished. No, civil society plays the role of intermediary between the government on the one hand, society on the other. Then civil society informs the society about the government. Civil society has a role of intermediary between government and society. They need to educate the society, create awareness in the society. Clear? If their suggestions are not accepted, if they are working on something, with the required seriousness, and they make objective assessment of the situation, they carry out research and development, and they give valuable suggestion, even if it is not accepted by the state institutions. If these are spread in the society and people they come to know about that, then civil society may not influence the policy, may not be in a position to influence the policy, but society can exert pressure on the society if society is well informed. So civil society is very much like a think tank sometimes, because top experts, they're associated with that. They also elicit best of actions from the judiciary. They play the role of intermediary. They educate people. Clear? They also play an important role in enforcing accountability of the government. So there are multi-dimensional, multifarious role of the civil society. So if their suggestions, their inputs are not accepted by state institutions, it does not mean that they become irrelevant. Their role is not only to give inputs to the government. They educate the masses. They carry out various activities. They work in collaboration with media and number of institutions in the development sector. Those who are which are non-state entities. So they have multifarious role. Simply because their inputs are not accepted does not mean that they become irrelevant. Clear? So the effectiveness of civil society in development process is only when state institutions are receptive to inputs. If state institutions are receptive to genuine inputs from the civil society, nothing like that, policies will be far more inclusive in nature, policies will be far more sensitive, far more accommodative, and it will be more sustainable. Why? Because civil society, they raise the voice of the people. They act as an intermediary between the two. But even if it is not accepted, it does not mean that effectiveness will go down. No, civil society inform the society, educate the society, they investigate various subject matters, they work in collaboration with media, they contribute in the process of giving shape to public opinion. So not today and tomorrow, it will benefit the society and the government. Then you have evaluate the role and scope of tacit knowledge and personal experience as an important source of knowledge in policy making process. Yes, policy making process. Policy making process is a very dynamic process. Policy making is a very dynamic process. Policy making involves consideration of more than one factors. You know, the knowledge and experiences of individuals and the groups, all such things are required to be taken into consideration. So tacit knowledge, unlike explicit knowledge, is the one which is not always expressed very clearly in terms of sentences and the words and the doctrines and principles. Tacit knowledge is something which is generally found to be very deeply embedded in the experience of individuals or group of individuals, and they play a very important role. They may not be clearly explained in terms of words and sentences or doctrines, but they can bring out something that remains hidden. And on the basis of this tacit knowledge, one can estimate, or one can anticipate the possible consequences of your policies. So on the face of it, policy decisions are taken on the basis of more visible facts, statistics, data. So technically you may be sound, but successful implementation of policy is different from implementation policy is a different ballgame. Sometimes best of the policies might fail. Best of the policy in terms of content, in terms of their factual base or research base, policy is very much sound, but very often they fail. Why? Because that tacit knowledge, that individual experience, that touch was missing. Why? Because this individual experience of these officers or bureaucrats or some ministers, then their experience and their tacit knowledge, which is not always expressible, so that actually provides the support that policy is sound, but this is not the appropriate time to implement such policy. And at this time, when you implement the policy, it will have negative consequences. And what if we implement it of no? After 2 months, there will be no problem. But this is something which emanates from experience. So policy making is a dynamic process. Policy making process is a dynamic process which is required. Policy making demands consideration of various factors: the financial, social, economic, cultural, political, domestic and foreign, the legal aspect. All such things are required to be taken into consideration. Then what is visible and what is invisible. So that invisible force, that invisible factors which very often interfere in the failure of the policies, that invisible factors which are not taken into consideration leads to failure. That invisible factors are required to be examined, on the basis of tacit knowledge, on the basis of individual experience. So things are visible, things are invisible. So tacit knowledge, unlike explicit knowledge, may not be visible, may not be expressible, may not be written in the rules, regulation, protocol, but they are found to be deeply embedded in the experience and deep understanding of the pattern of behavior, response, and the ability to anticipate things. So these are, no doubt, these are made use of significantly by the government. Because timing of the policy holds a lot of significance. कोई एक ऐसा टाइम होगा, किसी ने सजेशन दिया होगा, ये इंडिविजुअल एक्सपीरियंस की बात है कि फार्म लॉज सब कुछ सही लग रहा है गवर्नमेंट को, फार्म लॉज, लेकिन उन्होंने बहुत गहरे में इसकी पड़ताल की होगी कि ये पॉलिसी अगर इस वक्त इंप्लीमेंट करते हैं, गवर्नमेंट अगर चाहती तो बाय फोर्स वो कर सकती थी, ठीक है, लेकिन यही है टेसिट नॉलेज कि उन्होंने बहुत कुछ अपने अनुभव से देखा होगा कि जितना का फायदा नहीं उससे बहुत ज़्यादा नुकसान होगा, इसके पॉलिटिकल कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस क्या होंगे, बहुत सारी चीज़ें पेपर पे होंगी, लेकिन जो पेपर पे नहीं है उसी को बोलते हैं टेसिट नॉलेज. तो आपके मिनिस्टर्स होंगे, ब्यूरोक्रेट्स होंगे, वो बोलेंगे सब कुछ सही है पॉलिसी में, बट दिस इज नॉट द राइट टाइम because lot of developments are taking place within and outside country. There is a global local nexus. ठीक है, those who are opposing it, their intent and the purpose is different from what appears in front of us. तो अनुभव के आधार पर नहीं, आपको ऐसा कैसे लगा, आप कैसे लगा ये तो पेपर पे नहीं बता सकते, लेकिन ये भी सही टाइम नहीं है. इसको बोलते हैं टेसिट नॉलेज, इंडिविजुअल एक्सपीरियंस. और ये लोग, ऐसे लोग सक्सेसफुल होते हैं. Most of the cases, they have spent, so many years, so much of time dealing with one of the issues of the governance. ठीक है, अभी अमेरिका और भारत के बीच जो चल रहा है, आपने देखा टैरिफ वॉर को लेकर के चल रहा है. तो आप देखेंगे जयशंकर साहब जो हैं आपके फॉरेन मिनिस्टर जो हैं, तो बहुत सारे वो उनका टेसिट नॉलेज और एक्सपीरियंस उनका अपना होगा। उनके साथ जो फॉरेन सेक्रेटरी वगैरह हैं वो सब कंसिडर करेंगे इस वक्त क्या बोलना है क्या नहीं बोलना है। ये अनुभव की चीज़ है, कहीं पे किसी किताब में लिखी हुई तो नहीं है ना कि अगर अमेरिका दो बात बोले तो आपको भी, आपने देखा रिस्पॉन्स डोनाल्ड ट्रंप क्या कर रहे हैं और गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया कैसे कर रही है, शांत अपना काम शांति जैसे एकदम बिल्कुल इंटरनली फॉर्म है वो, ठीक है अंदर बहुत हलचल हो रही होगी इधर, लेकिन आपको बिल्कुल वैसे शांति बनाए रखनी है, ऊपर दिखना नहीं चाहिए, ठीक है अंदर वो धीरे धीरे अपनी स्ट्रेटेजी बनाए, अपने अनुभव एक्सपीरियंस को यूज करेंगे कि नहीं अभी वहाँ उसका मिनिस्टर जो है इस ढंग की बातें कर रहा है कि भारत को कीमत चुकानी पड़ेगी, हम भी उसको समझाए थे पर नहीं 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 ये समय ऐसा कुछ भी बोलने का नहीं, चुपचाप उसे बोलने दीजिए, कब तक बोलेगा, ठीक है खुद खुद जब तक भारत की स्थिति वो क्या खराब करेगा, उसके खुद डोमेस्टिक कंडीशंस जो हैं वो बहुत ज़्यादा सस्टेनेबल नहीं है, वहाँ काफ़ी हंगामा तमाशा चालू हो जाएगा। तो ये जो बड़ी बड़ी बातें कर रहे हैं इनको खुद विड्रॉ करना पड़ेगा, बिल्कुल शांत, अभी कुछ नहीं हुआ। उसी तरह से सिक्योरिटी का मामला हो, जैसे ऑपरेशन सिंदूर, वो जब पहलगाम में जो कुछ हुआ उस वक्त क्या हुआ, उस वक्त भी ऐसे बहुत सारे ब्यूरोक्रेट्स जैसे डोभाल साहब जैसे अजीत डोभाल साहब जैसे आपके एनएसए हैं, तो उनका वास्ट एक्सपीरियंस है, हर बात लिखी थोड़ी होगी, रूल्स रेगुलेशन प्रोटोकॉल ये सब नहीं होगा, किताबों में नहीं है वो टेसिट नॉलेज, वो उनका अनुभव, वो बोलेगा भी होल्ड करना चाहिए, कुछ भी नहीं बोलना चाहिए, उनको ऐसा लगना चाहिए कि भारत कुछ नहीं करने वाला है, या उनको लग रहा है भारत कुछ करने वाला है लेकिन हम लोग वैसे नहीं करेंगे जैसा कि वो सोच रहे हैं, ठीक है ऐसी बहुत तरह की बातें, उस जगह पे टेसिट नॉलेज और इंडिविजुअल एक्सपीरियंस दैट कॉन्ट्रीब्यूट इमेंसली इन पॉलिसी मेकिंग प्रोसेस। ये तो हमने बहुत एक्सप्लेन कर दिया, इसमें आपको लिखना होगा, तो इसमें इवेल्यूएट द रोल एंड स्कोप ऑफ टेसिट नॉलेज एंड पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस। टेसिट नॉलेज अनलाइक एक्सप्लिसिट नॉलेज, tacit knowledge and explicit knowledge, tacit knowledge unlike explicit knowledge refers to the deep understanding of any subject matter based on the experiences, ठीक है, which may not always be expressible in terms of policies or in terms of rules, regulations and doctrines, but that interferes, that to a great extent support the cause of the policy, because a policy may be technically very much sound based on facts, based on scientific analysis, but that invisible force that can interfere and that can lead to its failure, that invisible force is taken care of by tacit knowledge and individual experience. So it plays a very important role, very important. So policy decisions are taken in the government, these are implemented, okay, they implemented not only by what is visible, it is a formulation, and its implementation is conditioned not only by the visible thing but also by the sum total of individual experiences of those who are sitting at the top, individual experiences and their tacit knowledge that may decide the point, that may decide the appropriate time for its execution or implementation. So good policy decision, best of the policies may fail to accomplish the goal simply because simple manner of execution was not appropriate, timing was not so much appropriate, and that timing, the manner of execution, what is to be done, what is not to be done, the final shape is given not only by the visible things but also by individual experience and tacit knowledge. No responsible and progressive government can afford to lose sight of this stock, that tacit knowledge of the top bureaucrats or the ministers, they cannot lose sight of that. That experience has to be tapped, for proper timing, to decide the proper timing for the execution of the policies or to bring certain changes which may appear to be very much reasonable, very much scientific, but things are required to be changed. Only along this line you have to write. This tacit knowledge and personal experience, okay, tacit knowledge, personal experience put together, decide, very often decide to a great extent the political feasibility, administrative feasibility, getting what the environmental feasibility of such policy decisions, whether it can be implemented or not properly. That is something that comes from tacit knowledge and personal experience to a great extent. The political feasibility, administrative feasibility of the policy decisions being taken, all such things come from tacit knowledge. Then we have efficacy of management aid tools depends on the purpose and appropriateness of tools and techniques. They are simple. There are many tools and techniques of management, but depending on the purpose and appropriateness, we apply the same. As for example, ठीक है, so what is good for efficacy means power to produce desired results. ठीक है, the efficacy of management aid tools. Efficacy, there are many. As for example, you have management tools like CPM, critical path method. Then you have PERT, program evaluation review technique. Then उसकी example पे लिख सकते हो, CPM and PERT. They may be applicable in certain areas, but not in all areas. Depending on the nature of subject matter, we decide which tools will be applicable, which tools will not be applicable. As for example, if you have big infrastructure, the projects, you have for the project accomplishment PERT and as I said, PERT and CPM, this may be applicable. For the bigger projects where you have sequence of activities, you identify the critical path, those activities which are very much critical. If these are not completed in time, the entire project, the timeline, that you will not be able to conform to the timeline of the project. Then program evaluation review technique, these may be applicable. Both of them can be applied to this kind of projects. The projects which are where the things are largely predictable. Project for which you have such information. Point is clear? But these CPM and PERT, these projects may not. Example, CPM and PERT, these tools cannot be applied for smaller projects which are very much simple. Okay, it cannot be applied to those kind of organizations or those kind of projects which are very much dynamic, where things keep changing very fast. There is not the fixed track or sequence of activities. So what is applicable to big infrastructural projects or something, it is not applicable to simple the activities, programs and projects being programs and projects for socio-economic development, such programs and projects being implemented by the government. So there are more than one management tools and techniques, but their applicability, their instrumental value and worth depends on the purpose. The purpose, it depends on the purpose and the nature of the work. Okay, if the nature of work changes, the project, if the projects are different, then tools and techniques too will be different. Okay, the project is very much simple. There is not so much. If a project which suffers from resource constraint. Resource constraints are there. We are not very much sure how much resources will be allocated. Then PERT and CPM, these will not be applicable. The PERT, CPM, these tools and techniques can be applied only for those projects where you have already established fundamental knowledge. It's very much clear. Then you identify the sequence of activities, resource. You assume that resource allocation will never be inhibited. Resources will be allocated from time to time, then these tools are applicable. Just example है इसका, ठीक है, applicable. But in those projects where you have uncertainty about resources to be allocated, ठीक है, uncertainty about what will happen tomorrow or in a month or so, something, things are changing very fast. So what is applicable in one situation may not be applicable in other situation. Point clear? उतनी बड़ी बड़ी बातें छोड़ो, समोसा बनते हुए तुम देखो, समोसा बनते हुए देखो कभी? हलवाई की दुकान में देखना है समोसा बनते हैं, वो कितने तरह का छनौटा रखते हैं, छोटा बड़ा सब, वो समोसा डालेंगे, फिर समोसे को पलटने के लिए छोटे वाला यूज़ करें, कई बार सीख से करते हैं, वो लोहे का जो था उसे ऐसे ऐसे पलटते रहते हैं, फिर उसके छोटे वाला जो है उसके साथ पलटेगा, अभी दूसरा स्टेज आ गया तो उससे पलटेंगे, और जब पूरी तरह समोसा बिल्कुल पक जाए, अच्छी तरह से बन गया है, तब निकालने के लिए बड़े वाला छनौटा निकालेंगे, ऐसे सीधा निकाले. मतलब एक समोसा बनाने में भी कितने तरह के इम्प्लीमेंट्स वो यूज़ करते हैं, अलग अलग. ठीक है. सो व्हाट इज एप्लीकेबल इन वन सिचुएशन मे नॉट बी एप्लीकेबल इन अदर. ठीक है. गवर्नमेंट के भी जितने प्रोजेक्ट्स होंगे, अलग अलग प्रोजेक्ट्स का साइज क्या है, प्रोजेक्ट जो टाइमलाइन क्या है, प्रोजेक्ट का नेचर क्या है, एक्टिविटीज कैसी है, क्या एक्टिविटीज सीक्वेंस में है, ठीक है, सीक्वेंशियल एक्टिविटीज है, रिसोर्स एलोकेशन जो है वो सर्टेन है या नहीं है, ठीक है, और इसके बेसिस पर डिसाइड होगा कि इसमें ये मैनेजमेंट टूल्स एप्लीकेबल होगा या फिर दूसरा मैनेजमेंट टूल्स एप्लीकेबल होगा, या मैनेजमेंट टूल्स बहुत ज़्यादा एप्लीकेशन की जरूरत नहीं है, कीप इट सिंपल, इट विल बी मोर इफेक्टिव. ठीक है. तो वो प्रोजेक्ट जो है जो बिल्कुल फैक्ट सेंट्रिक है, वहां पर टूल्स एप्लीकेबल होंगे, लेकिन मोस्ट ऑफ द टूल्स आर नॉट एप्लीकेबल इन डीलिंग विद द सब्जेक्ट मैटर और प्रोजेक्ट और समथिंग विच इज वैल्यू सेंट्रिक. ठीक है. सो अधिकतर वो जो है वो टूल्स वो फैक्ट सेंट्रिक है, उस तरह के इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटीज वगैरह उनसे एप्लीकेबल है. देन सोशो कल्चरल एक्टिविटीज को डील करने के लिए आप वो सब टूल्स यूज नहीं कर सकते. सो मैनेजमेंट टूल्स कैन बी यूज्ड डिपेंडिंग ऑन नेचर ऑफ द सब्जेक्ट मैटर एंड द पर्पस. कंप्लीट. So we have discussed अच्छा था, क्वेश्चंस बढ़िया था। तो सेक्शन ए और सेक्शन बी पेपर 1 इज कंप्लीट। ठीक है, तो आज के लिए काफी। थैंक यू वेरी मच, थैंक यू।